of Joy Reid and Elvis Presley to go after something like this. Like it's almost like she wakes up in the morning saying, how can I be viral for the dumbest idea ever? And thinking, guess what? I'm relevant. They're talking about me.
Can't fix the history they did. Their ancestors made this country into a slave hell. But they can clean it up now because they got the Smithsonian. They can get rid of all the slavery stuff. They got PragerU. They can lie about the history to the children. They can't originally invent anything more than they ever were able to invent good music. We black folk gave y'all country music, hip hop, R&B, jazz, rock and roll. They couldn't even invent that, but they have to call a white man the king. Because they couldn't make rock and roll. So they have to stamp the king on a man whose main song was stolen from an overweight black woman.
How do you wake up in the morning and that's what you're talking about? That's what it's talking about. Mind you, it's 2025 and people like Joy Reid, Pat, that's all they want to keep bringing up is racism and slavery. And guys, we're not trying to erase history. It's history. It happened, okay? What year was it, Adam? What was the height?
Of what?
Of slavery.
Well, I mean, the Civil War was 1861.
Yeah, 60s, and then guess what? Think about it. When slavery was abolished when?
Yeah, when Abraham Lincoln and the North won,
so listen,
1865. It happened.
So when you hear it happened, but when you hear people like this, it's almost as if when you hear white supremacy and white this and racism and slavery, it's as if it was yesterday. Okay, it's been done for a long time. We're nowhere near where the hell we used to be. Okay. I hate that attitude. It's divisive. It makes people want to hate. It just keeps reminding you of shit that happened in the past. I'm not saying forget it, but can we move on?
This is Deuteronomy chapter 32 and verse 7. Remember the days of old. Consider the years of many generations. Ask thy father, and he will show thee, thy elders, and they will tell thee. I want to start off by giving all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Ruach HaKodesh. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, who are the elders of Yasher Allah, and a sincere salutation to all Yuakim, who are preaching this word and believing this word, and to the Akwath, who are believing this word, in all truth and in sincerity. I want to go into a lesson based on the clip that you saw of Joy Reid and the Valuetainment podcast and their reaction to her statements. And, you know, we don't subscribe to all the beliefs of Joy Reid. Neither do we subscribe to all the values of Valuetainment, you know, but I want to point out a perfect point that was made and expressed in that video. And it's that the Lord requires that which is past. All right. Esau, Edom, the so-called white man's attempt to gaslight our people into not remembering our past is because now they're being brought to shame because of it. All right. And this is why they're making this effort to rewrite history in the school system through critical race theory, because the same history they were proud enough to write about has become a shame unto them because it exposes their hypocrisy. All right, it's Habakkuk chapter 2, and I'm going to jump down to verse 16. Thou art filled with shame for glory. Drink thou also, and let thy foreskin be uncovered. The cup of the Lord's right hand shall be turned unto thee, and shameful spewing shall be on thy glory. And while we don't agree with a lot of the points that our people make outside of this truth, one thing that our people do get right often is to bring up what happened to us concerning slavery. And it's important to bring it up because this is history. You know, and what Esau, Edom, the so-called white man's doing is he's attempting to cover up his shame by basically teaching another generation, the younger generation, a different version of history so that they grow up and teach their kids the same thing. It's like the left-hand version of what the Lord told us to do. Let me get this real quick. This is Slakia, bear with me. I want to get this one. This is Deuteronomy 4 and 10. It says, especially the day that thou stoodest before the Lord thy God in Horeb, when the Lord said unto me, gather me the people together, and I will make them hear my words, that they may learn to fear me all the days that they shall live upon the earth, and that they may teach their children. Now, on the left hand, the so-called white man is attempting to teach our children lies, so that when they grow up, you won't have disgruntled so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans who bring up the shameful history of the so-called white man. This is the whole point of critical race theory. They're okay with you Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans that are 18 and up, 20 and up, 30 and up, 40 and up, complaining, because in their mind, you're going to pass away and the generation that's younger are going to have a different version of history. And this is all in an attempt to cover up their shame. And this is why when they are confronted with certain facts that Joy Reid brought out, the only thing they can really say is it was the past. Let's get over it and move forward. And they'll never tell the small hats that about Nazi Germany. They'll never tell a New Yorkian, let alone an American, to forget about 9/11. But they think so little of you Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans that they'll attempt to manipulate you into forgetting a human atrocity. This is a crime against humanity according to the international law that all of these nations are supposed to follow. And instead of acknowledging it, what the so-called white man does is he tries to cover up that shame. All right. Well, the Lord said this is Ecclesiastes 3:15. That which hath been is now, and that which is to be hath already been. And the Most High requireth that which is past. And this is why when you go and fast forward to Revelation, the last book of the Bible, and you go into verse 9, it says, if any man have an ear, let him hear. Verse 10 reads, he that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patience and the faith of the saints. And this isn't just talking about the Thomas Jefferson and his generation. All right. It's talking about them as a nation of people. This is why Isaiah 14:21 reads, prepare slaughter for his children, for the iniquity of their fathers, that they do not rise nor possess the land, nor fill the face of the world with cities. And I'm bringing these points out to show that the God that America claims to believe in requires what happens in the past. All right. The Lord, the God of the Bible, is also a God of judgment, and people forget that part. So the Lord requires that which is past. And if you think the words of our people bringing up our history is bad, you haven't seen anything yet. The Lord's actually going to require this in judgment. But it shows you how fragile these Edomites are. You can't even bring up the history without them acknowledging the atrocities that were done to establish Babylon the Great, which is America. And it shows you how little they think of you Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans and your blood that's been shed here. You know, they'll honor a veteran that went over there and killed a so-called, I won't even say Palestinian, a so-called Arab during the war on terror. They'll honor them, but they won't honor the ancestors that you Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans had that died here to build this place. And when you do bring it up, they say it's the past, while not forgetting the things that have happened to them as a nation of people. This is why the scriptures talk about the Lord requiring that, man, and the Lord not being mocked, most importantly. This is Galatians chapter 6 and verse 7. See, them little slick points that they try to make, black on black crime, black sold you into slavery. You know, your own people sold you. That don't have nothing to do with what you've done. The so-called blacks that sold Negroes into captivity didn't follow us over here on those ships and cut our rods off and lynch us and burn us alive and rape our women. No, that was all you. And the Lord need that. The Lord requires that. All right, it's Galatians 6 and 7. Be not deceived. The Most High is not mocked. For whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. And this doesn't just apply to men on a personal level. It also applies to nations of people. All right. So all of these little debating points that these people try to make to gaslight what they did to become a nation of people, it doesn't work in the eyes of the Lord. You can't manipulate the one that made you. You can't manipulate Yahweh Bashim Yahushai. And this is why the Lord's going to respond in cruel judgment. They may think that they can get away with these talking points and it helps them sleep at night, but ultimately the God that they claim to believe in requires this in judgment. He's not mocked. What you sow in the earth, you shall reap. All right, this Job 34:29. And it reads, when he giveth quietness, who then can make trouble? And when he hideth his face, who then can behold him? Whether it be done against a nation or against a man only, that the hypocrite reign not, lest the people be ensnared. So there's national judgments as well as personal judgments. The nation of Israel were given national judgments of captivity when they were disobedient. Likewise, another example is the Egyptians on the first Exodus. When it said the firstborn died, it wasn't just talking about Pharaoh's children. It was talking about all of the Egyptians' children. That was a national judgment. A national judgment is coming to Esau, Edom, the self-proclaimed white man, according to the Bible. Whether they believe it or not is irrelevant. The Lord doesn't require your approval to commence judgment. All right, this Wisdom of Solomon 18:11. The master and the servant were punished after one manner, and like as the king, so suffered the common person. And this is going into the judgment of the firstborn being put to death in Egypt. It wasn't just Pharaoh, even though he made the decisions. It was all of the Egyptians as a whole. They were punished for that. And that's what's coming to this place. And this is a beautiful way for you to realize that Esau, Edom, the so-called white man, there is no reasoning with them. You're talking about a delusional nation of people who, with all the history shown, still believe that they're the good guy in the movie somehow. You're not going to convince them of their own faults as a nation of people. This is why whenever you bring it up, they always talk about the Africans that sold Negroes into slavery, or there was always slavery around, even though it was a different context. Chattel slavery was completely different from what they were doing historically. Yet they'll do all of these points instead of acknowledging their own fault. Yet when we go into the scriptures and we look at it precept upon precept, we see that the Lord's mind is completely different from the so-called white man's mind, meaning the Lord is not going to just forget about it. And the Lord told his people not to just forget about it, but to remember the days of old. Our people had to live that. They talk lightly about our people living generation after generation, being born into captivity and dying in captivity. Witnessing your mother being ravished by somebody that owns her. Civil rights, the Jim Crow era, Reconstruction. And they make light of these things because in their eyes, your blood is expendable. They don't look at our people with any value outside of what we can do for them. And that's why it's a waste of time trying to convince them of anything. You're talking about a sociopathic, delusional nation of people. All right, it's Job 8:8. For I inquire, I pray thee, of the former age, and prepare thyself to the search of their fathers. And the moment you start searching, you quickly realize that as a nation of people, the so-called white man has been nothing but an enemy to you as a nation of people. I'm not talking about the personal relationships you may have at a job or passing through a neighborhood. I'm talking about as a nation of people. Actions speak louder than words, and their actions have shown that they are enemies to you as a nation of people. And the Lord requires that. In the eyes of the Lord, it's a righteous thing to repay that. All right. Even in Esau's system, you can't commit a murder. All right. And then say, I'm sorry, and just walk out of the jailhouse or walk out of the courthouse. You still have to pay for that. Well, the Lord requires this, man. This is 2 Thessalonians 1:6. It says, seeing it is a righteous thing with the Most High to recompense tribulation to them that trouble you. It's a righteous thing in the eyes of the Lord, man. That's why the Lord said in the law, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. Meaning whatever you sow on the earth is going to come back to you, whether it be a man or a nation of people. And no matter what kind of talking points and articulate verbiage they may try to use to cover up the shame, the Lord still requires it, man. You know, and Joy Reid, for the most part, is a bug out, but the points that she made were valid. How the so-called white man has stole you Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans' inventions and innovations, put their name on it, and called it their own culture. If you really look at it, they don't have a culture in America. If you take out everything that Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans have brought to the table. So that point that she made was correct. Yet, the response that you get from so-called white people shows that they are the devil that the Bible speaks of. Because now that they're being put to shame, instead of acknowledging it, they're trying to gaslight people into believing, oh, it was the past, it was so long ago. Why are you bringing up Elvis? Because if you don't, people will just be convinced that what your lies are the truth. Let's go here. And that's why that persecution is going to come in the famine of the word. Because there's nothing Esau, Edom, the so-called white man, can say to defend himself against the actions of his forefathers. There's nothing they can say. They've been reduced to just forget about it at this point. Because there's nothing that you can bring up to argue the justification of the lynching, the raping, the buck breaking, the castration, the delectable Negro. There's nothing that they can say to defend their actions as a nation of people. The only thing that they can do is try to rewrite history, sanitize it. But, call Allah Yahweh Shah, the Lord requires that which is past, man. All right, this is 2 Esdras 6 and verse 27. For evil shall be put out and deceit shall be quenched. How is it quenched? Through truth, through the words of Yahweh Shah. Bringing out that Esau, Edom, the so-called white man, is the devil that the Bible speaks of, and he's being exposed for his actions, past and present. And the idea of just saying forget about it, it's not working like it used to. Guilt tripping Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans into being quiet is not working like it used to. So that's why Esau's going to have to come down with great wrath and persecution. But it's beautiful. You're not going to stop anything. All right. Verse 28 reads, as for faith, it shall flourish. Corruption shall be overcome. And the truth, which hath been so long without fruit, shall be declared. Because while you have Joy Reid, she could talk about certain things that happened to so-called Negroes in the history of slavery. When you deal with the prophets, Lord willing, we be a part of that number, they deal with the entire situation. The biblical origin of all of the shit that we see going on in the earth today. Why Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans went into captivity? Who they went into captivity under? How does this situation resolve itself? And how it's going to resolve itself is the Lord's going to take Esau, Edom, the so-called white man, out of power, and they're going to have to serve captivity like they've made our nation serve and many other nations after us. And that's the balance of the Lord. Matter of fact, let's get Isaiah 14. This is Isaiah 14 and 1. For the Lord will have mercy on Jacob and will yet choose Israel and set them in their own land, which shows you that the Israelites are not in their land right now, because it said the Lord would set them there, not to bow for a declaration. And the strangers shall be joined with them, and they shall cleave to the house of Jacob, going into those Israelite foreigners who are scattered everywhere, but are of the seed of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And they may look like other nations of people, but their seed line goes back to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Verse 2, and the people shall take them and bring them to their place, and the house of Israel shall possess them in the land of the Lord for servants and handmaids, going into the other nations. And they shall take them captives, whose captives they were, and they shall rule over their oppressors. This is a future prophecy. Also, Jeremiah 30 and 16, therefore all they that devour thee shall be devoured, and all thine adversaries, every one of them shall go into captivity, and they that spoil thee shall be a spoil, and all that prey upon thee will I give for a prey. And that is the balance of the Heavenly Father. So while they try to use these word salads to get around the crimes of their forefathers. Ultimately, the Lord requires that they pay for them. And not with an apology, not with fiat currency, but with captivity. All right, so Lord willing, this was edifying. With that, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakakodash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, who are the elders of Yasha Allah. And a sincere salutation to all you Akim, who are preaching this word and believing this word, and to the Akwath, who are believing this word in all truth and in sincerity. Shalom.